As said in last week's video, I am still on my mission, working on my project, which I hope to be able to reveal to you all soon. And because I'm so busy with it, I am unable to make videos. And this week I've got another guest, and her name is Kato. And Kato has 6 tips on how to be a better client. And I think it's a really interesting video because if you use these tips, chances are big that your results are actually going to be way better. So I'm really excited for this video. And yeah, Kato, let's get started.
Hi everyone, hi White Sea. Thanks so much for having me on the channel. I'm really excited about it. I'm a little nervous, to be honest, but it's okay. This is gonna be good. This is good. I'm excited. So anyway, my name's Kato. I'm an audio engineer here in Southern California, and I mostly do tracking, mixing, some film and sound design work, that kind of thing. I haven't become super specialized yet. Maybe one day I'll figure it out. I don't know. Who knows? It's a mystery. But I do have a YouTube channel, and so that's going to be YouTube/C/Kato Zane, I believe. You can also search Kato Zane to find me if you want to check out my channel. We talk about audio engineering stuff. It's just audio engineering stuff. I acted like that was going to be a list, but it's really just audio engineering stuff. So all things audio engineering on my channel. Maybe there's going to be a link in the description. Maybe White Sea will put a link in the description. I'm not sure, but you can go check, and it won't be a mystery to you. You'll find out. Yeah, and I would love to see you guys on my channel. So if you like this video, feel free to come hang out on my channel too. I'm also really excited to see how White Sea's top secret activity is going. It sounds like it's going to be really, really cool. So I think it's going to be worth sticking around for, staying tuned for. So today I want to chat about how to be a better client. So it's really just an excuse to gossip about things that annoy audio engineers and things that clients tend to do that honestly I think, could just stop being a thing. So these are just the things that pop out from my personal experience, but there's going to be a million different things that you could potentially put on a list like this. So, especially if you're doing audio or studio work, I'd love to hear in the comments below what you would put on this list if you were to make this list. And who knows, maybe we can raise awareness for these pet peeves of ours and, improve clientele for all of us everywhere. I mean, probably not, but I don't know. It's a nice thought, right? Anyway, here's my list. Am I filming? Okay, so the first one I want to address, and this is the most generic one on the list, is just the idea of being professional. So I know for a lot of clients, they're working on whatever their project is for fun, right? Not all of them, but for a lot of them, it's a for fun activity. But for the engineer at least, it's work, it's our job. So a lot of times your engineer is going to appreciate it if you respect that concept. So if you're a client, you should make sure that you show up on time for your session. You should make sure you get your deposit in on time so we don't have to hunt you down. And you should do any homework that the engineer might assign to you. You should get plenty of rest the night before a session. You should make sure that your instruments are tuned and in good shape. And you should prepare anything like lyric sheets or chord charts ahead of time. If you're tracking, make sure that you've rehearsed your performance so things don't become a struggle bus when you get into the studio. And ask questions if you don't know how things are going to run. As engineers, we really enjoy when people come in with a little bit of professionalism, even if it's a just for fun session, because it helps things run smoothly and people are usually happier with the end result. And part of professionalism, in my mind at least, is being open to learning new things during the process. I think that people that tend to posture like they already know everything right off the bat, they tend to do horribly. At least from my experience, they tend to do horribly. And I think part of that's because they've become so obsessed with appearances that they then block themselves from learning anything. And, if you never learn anything, then you never improve. But anyway, if you come in with at least a hint of professionalism and you're open to communicating honestly with your engineer and whoever's helping you, then I bet you're going to be a great client and you'll probably have a really good time too. So number 2 is all about expectations. Clients need to stop expecting sessions to be super, super short. So many clients seem to think they can do something like track all of the drums for an entire album within just 2 hours. They don't seem to factor in setup time or breakdown time, or, the amount of time that it takes for them to get comfortable enough to get good takes to begin with. I've seen it so many times, especially with tracking, where people just seem to expect everything to happen on an insanely quick timeline. More experienced clients do tend to learn how much time to expect, though, so it's not so bad. And there are some musicians that are good enough to get it right on the first take, so they could crank out a session super quickly. But that's so very rare. So if you're new to tracking and recording studios, I definitely take your engineer's recommendation on how much time to book and be prepared for it to take a bit longer than you would expect otherwise. I know it really sucks to shell out so much cash for studio time, but it's way better than being rushed. So give yourself enough time to go through numerous takes so that you can really get it right. Tons of musicians need and take advantage of many, 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 many different takes until they ultimately find the one that they want to keep. And that's totally okay. Plus, there's nothing worse than having to break down a really awesome setup when you're not yet done tracking what you want to track with that setup. Okay, and so number 3 is essentially just another communication thing, and that's reference tracks. So whenever I'm tracking or mixing for a client, I always ask for reference tracks, but I do not always get them. And the best clients not only supply reference tracks, but they'll also follow my suggestions and they'll write, 1 to 3 sentences about each reference track saying what they like and do not like about the sound in that track. And I like this because it not only shows that they're enthusiastic and invested in the project, but more importantly, it actually helps the project run smoother because it's one of the most efficient ways to communicate what you want for your sound. After all, listening to something can be a lot easier than writing or talking about it. It's really hard to describe sounds using words. It can be very, very, very difficult. And so I think an effective use of reference tracks can be a great way to make sure that everyone's very solid on what the goal sound is. So if you're a recording studio client, I do recommend putting together a list of reference tracks with, 1 to 3 sentences about each one describing what you like and do not like about the sound in that specific track. And I think that's a great way to invest in smooth communication with your engineer, and it can definitely save you a lot of struggle later on. So for number 4, we're essentially cycling back to number 1 in a kind of roundabout way with the idea of being professional. And to be honest, I haven't run into this problem a whole bunch in the studio, but when it does happen, it can be such a pain. So the basic idea is don't bring your friends into the studio. Do not bring a million friends to your session. They are not professionals and they do not stay quiet. I feel like such a jerk just saying it because music is such a social thing, and I think sometimes it really does help the vibe to have people there in the session that aren't part of the band. And if there's someone whose feedback you find very valuable, then by all means, you should definitely bring them to the session. When it becomes a problem is when people want to bring a big group of friends with them. They want to bring their whole posse, and basically they then get distracted, turning into a hangout session, and then the work on music side of the session suffers. Sometimes when you get a group of people together, they want to chat, and they basically won't remember to stay quiet no matter how many times you tell them. And I really do mean no matter how many times you tell them. I've had it where, as the engineer, I've asked people to be quiet, and sometimes it's literal minutes until they start making noise again. If they're hanging out in the control room, this can really prevent your engineer from listening to your session, and the final result can really suffer because of it. Engineers, we listen on a really critical level, and so sometimes even quiet talking can interrupt that. And sometimes I just think that people don't understand that quiet means 100% quiet. It's not just yelling that we're trying to avoid. Number 5 is to essentially understand the differences between mixing and mastering, to know that there are engineers that do both mixing and mastering, but there are also a lot of engineers that are specialized in just one of the two. And so we should treat mixing and mastering engineers appropriately based on what they do. So obviously, good communication with your engineer can help with this one, but it essentially means not to ask an engineer that's specialized in mixing to master your project. It just seems like, from my experience, there are clients out there that seem to have not done the most basic research on what they're hiring the engineer to do, and they actually confuse the definitions between mixing and mastering as a result. But besides that, I've had some clients ask me as their mixing engineer to master the same track that I just mixed. And honestly, this one doesn't bother me a whole bunch because it can be a really fun exercise to master a track, but I'm not a mastering engineer. And there are a ton of specialized mastering engineers out there that are amazing mastering engineers that are super affordable. And I mean like 40 to 50 US dollars per track affordable. And they are specialized in mastering and they would do a much better job than I would ever do. I know that budgeting can be a huge issue for artists, but I think in a perfect world, clients would see that there's a ton of added value that they get by hiring a separate mastering engineer. Because, I mean, besides the fact that a specialized mastering engineer would do a much better job than a mixing engineer like me, and it doesn't have to cost a fortune, it's also a chance to get another set of trained ears listening to your stuff in a different, finely tuned room. And that means that they're more likely to spot the mixing engineer's weaknesses and then alleviate them. So, along the same lines, a mixing engineer delivers mixes and not masters. So you really shouldn't need to hear your track screaming loud when you're getting those mix previews from your mixing engineer. I've had enough clients complain about how a mix is too quiet that I now often add like an ad hoc mastering job to the master fader to bring that track up to a much louder level just for the previews of the mix that I'm sending out to the client. So I then remove that ad hoc mastering job when I'm actually working on the mix and when I finally send it out to the mastering engineer, but I do put it there just for the previews for the client. Not all the time, but sometimes. If clients were a bit more educated about the process and patient with the process overall, then I probably wouldn't have to do this at all. And, they would be previewing something that's a lot more accurately depicting what I'm actually doing, if that makes sense. I guess this problem stems from people wanting their stuff to sound completely finished immediately, like Spotify ready. But I guess I'm always really appreciative when I have clients that are educated enough about the process to know that my mixes are just going to be a little bit lower than their finished reference tracks. All right, and so the sixth and final thing on my list is another thing for musical clients, and that's just the basic idea that if you've been making music for years, you should probably invest a little bit of time into learning some basic music theory. I've met some people that claim to be producers that don't know some super, super basic like music theory 101 kind of stuff, and it really shocks me because I don't know how you can be into making music, be interested in music, be doing it for years even, and never get curious. Like, how do you never get curious enough to like one way or another decide to learn at least a little bit of music theory? I just don't get it. It's so far removed from my way of thinking that I don't understand it. And just a little story corner that's kind of relevant to this one here. I once had a client, I don't even remember if I ended up working with them, so they might have just been a potential client. But either way, they just had a 2-track beat, so like a stereo beat, and then a single vocal mic, and they wanted me to mix that for them. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do this, right? So one of the first things I asked them is if they knew what key their beat was in, right? It's a pretty basic question to ask at the beginning of working on something like this, especially when it's the type of beat that it's like they probably just bought the beat, right? And so oftentimes it has that info there for them to look at. They don't even need to be super aware of what key it's in, right? But I'll often ask what key a track is in just because it's just a little bit simpler and faster to ask the client sometimes than it is to figure it out myself. So it just saves a little bit of time, right? So I asked this person what key their beat was in, and they got defensive with me. So I'm like stressing out just thinking about it. But they got defensive with me and they got really angry. And what happened was I ultimately figured it out from talking to them. They thought that I was asking for some kind of like authorization code or like key to verify that they didn't steal the beat. And they thought that I was accusing them of having stolen a beat. And they not only didn't know what key their beat was in, but they didn't even know that a musical key was even a concept. They didn't even know that it was a thing. So, once I figured out that that's what they thought was going on, I explained to them that like, no, I'm not accusing you of stealing this beat. I'm not asking for any kind of authorization for this beat. This is a concept in music theory. I can figure it out. If you don't know the key to the beat, it's no problem. And I forget how it ended up, but it actually took a much longer conversation with this person than I ever expected to have in order for them to understand what I was actually talking about. So if for no other reason than smooth communication with your collaborators, if you're trying to make music, I think it makes a ton of sense to learn at least some basic music theory. So yeah, that's my personal list of how to be a better client in the studio. I would love to hear what you guys would put on your lists in the comments below. And again, White Sea, thank you so much for having me on your channel. I'm a huge fan of your channel, and this is so exciting to be here. So again, thank you so much. And, you know, come hang out on my channel. We can all nerd out about audio stuff together. I like doing that. That's why I made my channel. Create a little network of people hanging out, being nerds. No one in my life wants to talk about audio stuff, so this is what I have to do. I have to come on here, put on makeup, and talk about it, and then I get a little community. So it's actually pretty cool. I'm okay with it. But yeah, come hang out on my channel. We'll chat about audio stuff. It's a lot of fun. You guys are cool. I don't know what else to say. Bye. Okay.
All right, so huge thanks to Kato for filling in for me on my channel. And of course, I would highly recommend you all to check out her channel and subscribe if you like the content. It would be really nice if you would gain a few subscribers from this video. So while I'm on my secret mission, I could use some support. I mean, it's kind of an expensive mission. So if you want to support me, the links are all below. So yeah, Patreon, affiliate, and merchandise, it's all down below. Now, Kato did send me some outtakes to put at the end of the video, so we're going to play those, and for now, I want to thank you all for watching, keep pushing, and bye-bye.
I know what White Sea's up to. Sounds like it's going to be really cool. I'm excited to see how it goes. Top secret activity. It's going to be cool. I was making a face earlier that I really liked. It was like, I don't remember. Anyway. So yeah, that's my list. My list, guys. What I would put on the list. That's my list. I bite my lips because I don't bother putting on any lipstick. That's what I do. I just bite my lips instead. That's how lazy I am. That's how lazy I am.